guys, it's Sylvia from Backyard Brushes in historic Fountain City, Wisconsin. In today's video, it's all about purses. I received some free beadboard from an individual, and I had picked up a purse at a thrift store for $4 for the 40/40 challenge. So let's roll up our sleeves and let's get creating. For project 1, I used some beadboard I received free from an individual, and I cut it using a pattern I got from Woodcraft Blueprints, and I assembled wooden purses. I chose Sweet Pickens milk paint in the color Cheshire, and I mixed the paint to a 1:1 ratio. While the paint sat, I used Weather Wood by DIY, and I just kind of spread the paint on the wood, and then using a baby wipe, I used the paint to stain the wood. That way I could still see some of the wood grain. And then I just went all around the whole wooden purse, and using the baby wipe and the weathered wood, I just stained the wood, giving it a deeper, darker look. And I did this all around the whole purse. That way the wood kind of blended all together and you didn't have the look of like fresh wood versus the old wood. And I also used the weathered wood on top of the face of the beadboard just to kind of darken it up. And I just used the same baby wipe and I wiped off all the extra paint. I received the pattern for this purse from Jen at Woodcraft Blueprints. However, you could probably also find similar patterns either on YouTube or on Pinterest. And if you don't cut your own wood, it's actually a simple enough pattern. You could probably have a friend that could help you cut the wood. And you also don't have to use beadboard. I just tried the beadboard because I liked the textured effect. Once the paint dried, I used Cheshire in Sweet Pickens milk paint, and I gave the purse 2 coats of paint. When using Sweet Pickens milk paint, yes, it is unpredictable, and I'm hoping to get some chipping, but also know or plan on using 2 coats of paint. And then once my box was completely coated, and while it was still wet, I did use the heat gun on the paint before it dried, hoping to get some really good crackling. I did make a second box, and I had used denim in Sweet Pickens milk paint, and I really didn't like the color for the purse. I felt it was a little too dark. So I actually used some ironstone Sweet Pickens milk paint, and I mixed it right into the denim milk paint for the second coat of paint. And it was actually, I loved the lighter color much better than the darker color. And although I'm no expert at all in mixing paint, I'm glad I took the risk. I liked the lighter blue. And so all I can say is don't be afraid to experiment. After letting the lighter shade of blue sit for a minimum of 10 minutes, I did mix it up a little bit with my paintbrush, and I gave the second box its second coat of paint, and I also used the heat gun. And here you can see what a difference adding that ironstone to the denim made to the color of the paint. Using a fine grit sandpaper on my finger sander, I just rubbed the finger sander along the grain of the wood, and it just easily chipped right off. And that's just part of the beauty of the milk paint. And I went around the whole purse with the finger sander. While using the baby wipe to clean up my purse, I discovered I actually could use the baby wipe to wet distress the milk paint on the wood, and that was new to me. I chose to use Sweet Pickens dark oil. as a sealant, and this is the first time I've used the Sweet Pickens oil, and I'm not gonna lie, I loved it and I will definitely use it again, and it is so easy. Using an old brush, I just covered the whole purse with the oil. I could have probably also used a sponge brush. I then just let the purse sit for 20 minutes, came back with a shop towel, and just wiped off the extra oil. For the blue purse, I decided to try the Sweet Pickens oil wax in white, and I absolutely loved that white alongside that light blue. Using DIY Big Top, I'm going to seal 8 washers that I oxidized in last week's video. It gave a more of a used rusty crusty look versus brand new. Using E6000 glue, I put the glue on one side of the washer, the side that doesn't have the big top, and I left them on top of the holes I had previously drilled and let them sit overnight. I chose some lace for the handles of my purse, and I didn't really use a ruler, but I measured out approximately maybe 2 feet and cut the lace. I then snipped the end of the lace so that it would be easier for me to tie once I got the lace inside the box. I inserted the end of the lace through the washer, through the holes of the box, and I double knotted the lace so that it was thick enough that it wouldn't just slide through the hole. And I used the end of like a brush to push the lace through the hole, and I just double knotted it. I'm not that coordinated, so I'm sure you can tie your knots a lot faster than I did. Using the same procedure, I inserted the other end of the lace through the second hole, and I just made sure that there was enough lace to droop down to mimic a handle of a purse. Using scissors, I just clipped the ends of the knots just to give it a more clean look. And for my blue purse handle, I used a wired burlap lace ribbon. You have to let me know in the comments if you liked the green purse or the blue purse better. For project 2, I'm using a purse I got at a local thrift store, and I paid $4 for it. The purse will be part of my 40/40 challenge, where in Sonnet's membership group, we were challenged to spend $40, flip the items in 40 days, and whoever makes the most money off the flip wins the challenge. So the first thing I did is I unbuckled the front handle of the purse. Using burlap by DIY, I gave the whole purse a coat of paint. This included the top, and I just went right over the zipper. And once the first coat of paint dried, I did apply a second coat. Using Fusion Paint and Mulberry, I gave the leather straps a coat of paint, and because it's Fusion Mineral Paint, it does not need to be sealed, so that's actually kind of a bonus in a project like this. I also painted the bottom of the purse in the mulberry color. Once the paint was dry, I grabbed this burlap, I think it's Burlap Roses, by Repurposed decoupage paper, and it's one of my favorite papers. And I cut it to fit over the face of the purse. I used a mister bottle and sprayed it to loosen the fibers. What I missed on camera for this round was I did give the front of the purse a coat of liquid patina by DIY. Using parchment paper, I just used my little Cricut heat press and I applied the decoupage paper onto the front of the purse. I used my scissors and I just trimmed around the excess paper. Now, using my favorite method, I grabbed a lighter and I just went around and I burned off the extra paper. I do not recommend doing this inside the house at home, but just so you know, I do have water on hand in case I were to lose control of my controlled burn. But the flame does stop once it hits the decoupage agent, so I don't have to worry about it burning through the whole purse, I guess. It just stops. So it gives me a nice trim when I'm using rounded surfaces. I also like kind of that grungy look it gives with the burnt ends. It gives it more of that rustic vibe. Once I was done, I gave the whole purse another coat of liquid patina to seal that decoupage paper onto the purse. I then followed the same process on the back of the purse. I used liquid patina as my decoupage medium, and you can use your favorite decoupage medium. And I just gave part of the back part of the purse a coat of the decoupage medium, the liquid patina. I then placed the misted decoupage paper on top of the decoupage medium. Then I'm going to fold up a half of the decoupage paper and I'm going to apply the liquid patina under the paper and adhere the second half of the decoupage paper to the purse. I'm using the parchment paper and the heat press method to apply the decoupage paper. I trim the edges and I use the burn method to take off the excess paper, and I seal it with the liquid patina. I decided to use a rose mold from IOD, so I used cornstarch in a little baby brush and I applied the cornstarch inside the mold. The purse has a little metal bracket that I just applied the decoupage paper right on over top of it. I think it's like, I don't know the name brand of the purse, on a little metal tag. So I decided a rose mold would help hide that little metal bracket. And I chose the roses to match the decoupage paper. I used air dry clay and I let them sit for a few minutes, and then I just popped them right out of the mold. I did break the leaves when I was popping them outside the mold, but that's okay because I can fit them together when I glue the pieces together. I arranged how I felt like I wanted my rose on the purse, and then I used some pink paint by DIY. I can't think of the name of it. I got it in my last maker's box. I also used a green, I want to call it Carriage House by Fusion, and I sealed the rose and the leaves with Big Top. Using cocoa bean wax by Fusion, it's a darker brown. I just dabbed all over the roses and the little leaves. And then I decided to darken it up a little bit. It was a little bit too brown, I guess, chocolatey brown. So I decided to use some DIY dark wax, and I just went right over the brown wax just to kind of darken it up a little bit. Using a paper towel, I just wiped all the excess wax off, and it gave it more of that distressed, aged look versus a shiny, brand new painted rose. And I wanted more of that vintage vibe to match with the burlap rose decoupage paper from Royce. I attached the roses to the purse using E6000, and it's towards the end of my bottle, so it was getting a little bit more difficult to smush it out. But I gave all the pieces a really good amount of the glue. I set them on the purse and attached them in a way that I felt looked okay. Plus it covered up that area where the metal bar is under the decoupage paper. Then I just allowed it to dry overnight. I just left it alone and practiced my patience. I think if I was to do this again, I would probably do it in like a silver color with a dark wax, so that would maybe pop a little bit more off the paper. I felt with this lighter color, there just wasn't as much contrast as I was hoping for. So, yep, next time I'm going to use maybe silver or gold or brass. So, what do you think? I'd love to know. So, which project do you like best? Do you like the repurposed thrift store purse or the repurposed beadboard wood purse? If you found this video inspirational, please hit subscribe below and follow me along on my creative journey. Thank you.